So, guys, wasn't it interesting, the Nottingham Forest game, and how almost symbolic it was of where Leeds United are at right now? It felt like the goal, and you'll see my goal reaction on the watch along, the roar, the hope, the optimism, then 135 seconds later, absolutely quashed by Nottingham Forest equaliser. And it very much felt like that was the confidence drainer of which I think a lot of Leeds fans are feeling at this moment in time. It feels like Leeds aren't effectively losing to the better teams sometimes on the day, and I think that the numbers reflect that, and I think we're all quite aware of that. But I do think overall, when you need sort of action at these moments, you need someone to be proactive. I think there is a mass hesitation on the pitch and in the boardroom at this moment in time. So the tactical loop is interesting when it comes to Daniel Farke, and this video is primarily going to be on why I think it's correct for the 49ers to do the action right now, to make the call right now when it comes to this, the Daniel Farke sacking in November, and why I think this will help Leeds United overall. So stick with me through this, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. So it feels Farke has reverted to that possession first, safety obsessed setup that we're all quite aware that he likes to go on. When Leeds are building out from the back, it feels like they don't have players who can build out from the back as successfully as the ones who aren't maybe selected. Tanaka, Strauch, and probably looking at William Yonto, who wasn't involved in the matchday squad. They are the control options. And it feels like at this moment in time, Leeds dominate the ball, as we're well aware of, but not the game. And Farke was sort of pointing to the possession that we had against Brighton. There was conversations about the possession that we had against Forest, all of which we were dominant when it came to those two statistics. But then Leeds United didn't ever really look like winning both games and conceded 6 goals in the process. 3 things are correct during the game as well. The defence being pinned back, the midfield recycled, and the attack completely isolated. And we're seeing a real growing pattern with these 3 things. Now, history repeating itself is an interesting one. Norwich to Leeds, points after 11. Norwich in 1920 had 9. Leeds have got 11. Goals for 11 and 10. Goals against 24 and 20. Possession 52 and 53. The outcome 20th and 16th. Norwich started really brightly in the season with Daniel Farke in the Premier League, and they collapsed by Christmas. And I think the interesting thing is when you look at Norwich was the possession-laden football. It was the late substitution, and naturally the confidence and morale spiraling. Leeds show the same momentum, but in my opinion, with a far better structured recruitment, more money spent, and just generally far better players. And Farke's Premier League record at this moment in time is 76 games and 12 wins. And the common thread here is predictability. Now, when we're looking at the 11 points, it's really interesting to focus on that as well, in my opinion, because I was saying at the very beginning of the season, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it does make a lot of sense. If you get to that 11-point gap, then you can look statistically in history. The BBC were putting it out. There's only a set amount of teams who've gone down when it comes to getting this amount of points after this amount of games. But at this moment in time, you have got to look at the recent trend when it comes to Leeds United, and that is a downward trend. Leeds are 16th in the table, 10 goals scored, which is the 3rd fewest. 20 goals conceded. The XG is 13.36. The XJ is 14.31, which puts our expected points at 15, which is kind of a regression underway. In the last 5 games, 4 of which Leeds United have lost. Leeds are picking up 0.75 points per game, which should have us on about 34 points to end the season. And 7 of the 10 games that we've played so far, or 7 of the 10 teams that we've played, have been in the bottom half of the table, of which that run is going to change pretty drastically now. It feels like the direction so far has been relatively average. I know we're happy with us being in 16th right now, of course. Yeah, that's great. But I think there's more context to be applied here. Leeds losing 4 out of 5 after we were told that it was going to be the 2nd easiest run when it comes to fixtures in the season. And now we're going into a run of which something just drastically has to change. Now let's revert back to that Norwich team. In 2019-20, the net spend was 8 to 10 million. 21-22 was 15 million. Others have survived with lower budgets. Sheffield United, a very low budget in 1920. Burnley in 2021, which was very, very low. And Brentford, and obviously they've got an incredible recruitment strategy, but they didn't spend a lot either when they came up to the Premier League, all of which survived. 13th, 17th and 9th comprises of their finishes. And I think the interesting thing when you're looking at these 3 teams in particular is they adapted tactics to survive. And it feels like at this moment in time, Daniel Farke is doubling down. And, you kind of look at all those 3 teams, look at that Norwich team, and now you look at the Leeds United team. When you look at those other 4 teams in comparison to Leeds, Leeds have had way more resources to play with, and yet Leeds do play the exact same way. And I would say, Norwich, I guess you could look at and say they were broke at the time. They didn't invest enough into it. Leeds aren't. We have still spent 100 million and we've still got one of the best squad available in the Championship. It feels like the floor isn't finance for Daniel Farke. It is flexibility. And as well, there's the rebuttal now. You can't sack him now. It's on the international break. There are 13 players away or whatever it is. But I think that's fundamentally wrong. This is why clubs act right now. The international break, there's 0 fixtures. There's space for reset. The remaining, 12, 14, 15 players and academy prospects. There's a tactical groundwork period there. And there's many historical examples of that reset. Emery, when he came in at Villa and took over with Gerard De Zerbi in around about September for Brighton, obviously Lopetegui as well in that November period for Wolves. They all used the break to prepare, then bounced instantly. The momentum loss is much worse than the temporary absences, and 13 players away isn't a barrier. It's breathing room to install ideas and methodology and a culture immediately. Now, there are loads of examples of managers who've beaten the odds across Europe. Thomas Frank, Brentford, obviously in the Premier League, everybody was expecting them to go down, enabled that survival. Michel at Girona, 16th budget in La Liga at the time, finished in the top 4. Urs Fischer, the lowest wage in the Bundesliga and got to the Champions League. Thiago Motta, who we've mentioned before, Europa League, basically with kids in Serie A, defying the odds. Arne Slot at Feyenoord, effectively a lower top bracket budget, and he got the Eredivisie title. Money limits definitely who you buy, but not how you play. And this is why yesterday I was so specific on not having to go out and spend so much money. If you get a manager who can improve certain profiles, that is the key. Why is November the month? Now, I did a little bit of research on this. London Economics provided a study, or did a study, I should say, and came to the conclusion that early sackings equals 7+ points in the next 10 matches, and 70% of early changes improved versus 41% of late. Sure, in 2019 also did a study and found that this is a massive effect when it comes to sacking managers early on in lower half teams. Ladbrokes have also done a little bit of statistical analysis and found that early chances boost survival odds dramatically. There is a logistical window here as well. There's a 2-week international pause, no fixtures, and the upcoming run is going to be hard, of course, but you act now. There's preparation time, and the alternative is to wait for defeats and crisis, and then you go into January, really, with no manager wanting to come to Leeds. Leeds could be 19th. And look, the optics of coming to Leeds when we're 19th or 16th is a completely different notion. Now, there is precedent as well. We look at Everton. Dyche came in 2023, safety. Wolves, Lopetegui, they finished mid-table. Leicester, they waited, they got relegated. Southampton, they waited, they got relegated. An action isn't safe, it's silent surrender, people. Now, the 49ers caution problem is something that I've spoken about previously as well, and they apparently wanted to get rid of Daniel Farke, as we're all aware, in the summer months, of which there was shortlisted people that didn't look like it was working, and they kind of bottled it when it came to the fan reaction, and that is why I put the thumbnail up as I have, and this hasn't been helped as well by VP Vice President Parag Marat being at Rangers and them bringing Russell Martin in, him having a horrific run, the worst Rangers manager in history, and them delaying to make the right call and bring Danny Roll in. That was interesting when it comes to business versus football logic, really, with the 49ers. Now, the 49ers Enterprises are a data-driven group that values process over distribution. In the NFL, there's aggressive trades, but in football, it feels like, as well, when you're looking at that Rangers example, when the Enterprises and the summer of which, they put out the feelers very early on of getting rid of Daniel Farke, and they didn't do it. They stopped doing it at that moment, and that has different reactions, of course, with different fans, but they didn't do it, and that's the primary thing, where they could have then built around a new manager, given the manager time. They didn't do that. And in football, hesitation is absolutely killer, and this is what's worrying me at this moment in time about maybe Parag Marat above anyone. Every metric right now with Leeds shows a decline, XG, form, points per game. And obviously we know with relegation it's probably going to cost them upwards of 120 million quid. And the sacking cost is what? 4 million quid. I think the waiting isn't prudence. It's a 100 million pound gamble. But have they done that in sort of alignment with just wanting, if they do go down, they go down, and they look at the Ipswich model. But I just don't, with everything they've said and how ambitious they are, that would just be crazy to me. No one else available as well. That's sort of a common thing I get thrown back on the videos. You know, when you're looking at managers, there is managers available, everybody. You know, we illustrated a couple, many on the continent as well. Ferraioli, could you make a real gamble for someone like him? I don't think that would happen. But Cesc Fabregas, I've mentioned him before, Thiago Motta. There is a rap sheet of managers who you can go and get and should be able to attract in 16th. As I've said previously, you do that in 19th, it becomes a lot harder. You look at Wolves right now, they've had to do that in 20th, and who they've been looking at is Rob Edwards, Michael Carrick, and have been rejected by Gary O'Neill. This is the pot that you're working in when you get into that bottom three, and especially when you're going into that bottom three in January. It's not as attractive, so doing it now makes way more sense to me. And as I've said, the 11 points is fine, but on the current trajectory, the current points per game, the current form, Leeds United will end on around about 32 to 34 points, which will have us in the relegation zone at the very end of the season. As I've said, the points per game is really need to look at as well. 0.75 points per game in our last 5. And you look at the opponents that we've faced as well. We've lost to Burnley in that time. We've lost to Brighton. We've lost to Forest and conceded 8 goals against these teams in the process. And we have scored 1 goal. Not good enough. The fork in the road is where we're at right now. You know, Leeds sits 16th. The form is sliding. The belief feels a little bit fragile. And November feels like the last reset before the fixture storm. The 49ers, for me, must decide to, you know, if they want to protect the optics, then they risk relegation, or do they act boldly right now? Very much of the Mr. Marinakis, Nottingham Forest saga, where they then save the season and potentially brand. And it's interesting, isn't it, that paradox of a board who speaks about ambition, a board who speaks about getting to this point, which we've all heard as Leeds United fans before. And this is why the 49ers are starting to get on my nerves a little bit, I'll be honest with you. But a board that preaches that, but then is afraid to act when it matters most, is a little bit of a worry for me and a massive contradiction. It does very much feel that maybe Farke's caution on the sideline does mirror that of what we're seeing in the boardroom right now. In all fairness to Farke, you know, 1 will cost you points, 1 will cost you the Premier League survival. So you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Am I right? Am I way off? Are you a little bit worried about the 49ers like I am at this moment in time? It's not to say like, you know, you want Daniel Farke sacked, but I do think there needs to be a change at this moment in time. It doesn't feel like there's going to be a change with the 49ers. From what you hear in the background, they're okay, they're calm, but it is that hesitant thing again. I think hesitancy will cost you in the Premier League massively. You know, you can't be passive, and we're seeing trends from Norwich. We're seeing trends in our last 5 games. We're seeing trends from last season. We've seen the same trends in Daniel Farke's career, and I'm really worried for Leeds United right now. And I think currently we are going to be one of the relegated sides. Something has to change, and if it's not, then you know what are they then going to do? Is it going to get to Liverpool and then you're going to sack him? Is it going to get to Chelsea and then you're going to sack him? What are the optics there? And if Leeds are in the bottom 3, then if Leeds are second bottom, what do you think is going to change? Managers aren't then going to see Leeds as some sort of attractive prospect. At least right now, we are out of the relegation zone. That looks a little bit more attractive to managers on the continent. Right now, it is the right moment for me to do so. A culture set can happen at Leeds United even during the international break, and there have been massively successful November international breaks, as we've illustrated, when managers have come in. We cannot be fearful of that. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Have you enjoyed this video? Have you not? Let me know. Keep it respectful in the comment section as well. I'll see you in a bit.